Welcome to the Quill Kettle podcast, where intuition meets industry. Join me as I sit down with authors, editors, designers, and other publishing professionals for tarot-guided interviews that blend business, psychology, and magic to dive deep into what it really takes to build a sustainable and inspiring creative career. Each interview is guided by a 5-card tarot spread that I've created specifically for this show. The cards are interpreted through an archetypal lens rather than used for divination. The intention held while pulling the cards for each interview is you, the listener. I hope each episode brings you closer to finding your own aligned path to a creative career that fits your life. Today I'm joined by author and influencer Serene Heiner. Serene is a creative soul behind the growing Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube accounts Magical Booknook, where she does all kinds of weird things with her eyebrows. A fantasy fanatic at heart, she occasionally dabbles in other genres, just don't tell the dragons. She's a proud mother to 7 readers and lives with them and her husband in their Idaho home surrounded by teetering stacks of books that may or may not be load-bearing. Usually I dive into my tarot spread here, but we're changing things up a bit this time. For this interview, I selected a card from my Sacred Forest Oracle deck by Denise Lind. The guiding card today is Toadstools, which represents hidden growth, and it's the perfect card to capture our conversation. So much of our learning, growing, and becoming happens below the surface. It may not look like much is happening right now, but staying true to your goals, keep honing your skills, and believe in your path to publishing, because when it is time, change will happen seemingly all at once, and you will be ready for it. Well, thank you for hanging out with me today. And before we get started, seeing as this is called the Quill and Kettle, I'm just curious if you could, the kettle part of it. What are you drinking? Are you drinking anything?
I drank some caffeinated hot chocolate this morning,
Oh,
but now I just have my trusty water bottle with me.
yes, hydration. That's good. All right. First of all, I guess just so I think I want to start not just with the who are you and what do you do? Because I think a lot of folks know you with the Magical Booknook, and that's kind of where we are with that. But I also think that there's a lot going on under the surface with you. From what I know about you, you do a lot of things. And so I just kind of want to know, when you are not, making hilarious videos on the internet, what are you doing?
Oh, well, let's see. Well, I do have 7 kids, and 6 of them are still at home. Only my oldest daughter has moved out. So I do still have 6 kids at home, and that is busy, especially my 2 oldest boys that are still at home are graduated. So they're kind of in and out with jobs and friends and whatever, and then a couple of high schoolers, and I still have a couple in elementary school. So my schedule, just even in that, is kind of chaotic.
Hmm.
But I also teach free exercise classes to the community in the mornings. So every morning from 8:30 to 9:30, I am teaching a fitness class.
Nice.
Yes, and that actually is a huge part of my life because I choreograph everything. So whether I'm teaching weights, I'm creating weights rounds, or if I'm teaching the dance fitness, then I'm creating choreo for that. So I spend a lot of time doing that.
Okay, and yeah, you do Ironman competitions, do you not?
Spartan races, yeah.
Spartan races. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, yes, those are
okay,
really fun,
that's
and
cool.
that takes a lot of training.
I bet, I bet. I do
Yeah.
kettlebell workouts, and yeah, that's not it.
Yeah.
It's nice, and I like it, and it's a good way
Yeah.
to start the day. But it's not. I'm even this morning. I'm 15 pounds is good. I'm just gonna do that.
I will say I will say, actually, having the classes keeps me consistent, and
Mhm.
it keeps me having to push myself because as the instructor, everyone's watching you, and so I'm always having to research, proper form and proper this and things like that. So it really does just the group fitness aspect definitely forces me to keep me, on top of my game. I have to stay
Yeah.
up there, so
Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering too, just get right into it right away. With how many creative things you do, what are your thoughts on the fact that you do exercise in the morning, and then you do all of these other creative things around, and then also staying sane for 7 children. I have 1, and I'm like, oh God. So, like, that's, I bow down to you for that. But, with staying active in the mornings, do you think that has an effect on your ability to create?
Oh, for sure. I think we underestimate how much, like, our bodies need movement.
Mhm.
And not to say that the introverts need to go out and join a group fitness class or
Right.
anything like that, but movement is so important for blood flow and just even brain function and all of those things. And so I really there's a part of me that when someone says, "Oh, I hate exercise," or "I hate this," or "I hate that," I'm like, "You just need then you haven't found something that works for you."
Mhm.
If that's taking walks, if that's going swimming, if that's riding up like, whatever it is, it's so important for your brain function. Just even how you feel, like, how you feel about yourself and how you feel about, what you're accomplishing and doing. I don't know, I feel like movement, whatever that looks like for you, is
Mhm.
super important.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like a reluctant exerciser, right? Like I was a dancer growing up and I danced for 15 years and then I stopped dancing. Well, I did some ballroom after high school when I was done the competition circuit and then I just stopped. But my husband is an athlete. He plays all sorts of sports. He's a cyclist and all that kind of stuff. And he started to when I got into exercising, he started to instead of being like, "You should do this, it's good for you," he's like, "Do you wanna write today? Like, would you like to be creative today? You
Ah,
could maybe get some" what and so I'm like, "Fine, I'll do it." But we started these, kettlebell workouts, and they're, functional. It's functional strength training,
yes. Mhm.
and engages the dancer side of my brain because I
Okay.
get so bored just doing, like, rip 1 movement over and over, like, 5 sets of 10 reps, and I'm just like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
But with the functional strength training, there's so many you're moving your whole body, and you're like, "Okay, if I am not balanced, I'm gonna drop this 30-pound weight on my face, and that's not gonna feel good." So, like, you really have to focus and get engaged, and then that started to, um like, I no longer avoid it.
Yeah.
I still
Yeah.
need a bit of encouragement to, put my coffee down and go down and work out. My husband turned our basement into a gym, which is helpful because, again, introverts, I'm not going to a gym. I also live in the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere, so there isn't a gym. But, yeah, so having that kind of motivation. But, yeah, it does absolute wonders for my ability to write and my
Yeah.
ability to create and stay focused during the day.
Well, and to be fair, I also think that it gives people a sense of accomplishment
Mhm.
because writing can be it's such a long-term goal or like the journey is long. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And
Yeah.
so whether it's self-publishing or traditional publishing or just finishing the stupid book, like it just takes a lot of effort and time. And
Yeah.
so I think most writers, there's a high to be had when they're just starting out or when they're doing it, but there is something to be said when you're stuck in the trenches of
Mhm.
whatever aspect or whatever part of the journey you're on, and it's so hard to feel like you're actually accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
Like, ever, and so sometimes I might get but if you get up and take a walk or if you get up and just move your bodies, that I feel like that can help lift that because you get that instant hit of dopamine, but in a
Mhm.
positive way, the one that doesn't involve a crash, and so I
Yeah.
feel like that can help spur on some of your creativity because I am a firm believer that, writer's block is not a lack of creativity.
Mm.
Writer's block does not come from a lack of ideas. Writer's block, in these quotations,
Yeah.
comes from tiredness, being tired, right? The emotional weight of something, the physical weight of something, the mental weight of something. When you are carrying all these loads, like as adults, when we carry all these loads, sometimes writing is an outlet for that. And sometimes those things cut off access to that creativity, right? Where
Mhm.
instead of the writing being the outlet, we're frustrated because we're so worn down that our creativity isn't flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's preaching to the choir there. I don't really believe in writer's block. I feel like usually it's what you said, or it's more about not knowing enough about your characters, like getting blocked because you don't know what your character would do in that instance, or like maybe there's a plot point that's kind of like tangled and you got to untangle it, that it's not necessarily like this outside force that's being like, "You shall not write
Right.
today." It's like, I have a three-part thing where it's create, consume, and connect, and I try to, like, rotate through those things. So if I watch too much TV, too many movies, read too many books, spend too much time consuming other people's art, then I get all tangled up in, like, what's mine and what's not. If I spend too much time just creating my own stuff, then I'm, like, running the same ideas over and over again, and it becomes uninspiring, and if I'm not talking with other creatives and other authors like what we're doing here, like, I just feel so alone. And, like, all three of those things, it's, like, finding that balance between them. That's sort of how I see it, but,
I love
yeah, like,
that. I love
exercise is
that.
also a creative, like, moving your body is also creative, and it can be, it doesn't, like, I mean, that would be, like, a whole 'nother podcast. We'd go on the Huberman Lab to talk about that. We're gonna talk about writing here.
Okay. Sorry. We'll bring it back in.
Yeah, but no, it's very important to the creating, to the creating piece of it, and so, I guess going into that, with your writing and with your online world, like, how do you so now you've got all this creativity because 'cause you've moved your body, what do you do with it?
Well, it depends on the day. No. Um, okay, so here's what's funny is when it comes to my social medias, when it comes to things that I create for that, whether it's a reading joke or a writing joke or whatever it is, I find great joy for me in making someone else laugh or making their day brighter or, because let's be honest, sometimes life sucks. And
Mhm.
so the last thing you wanna do is go online and be met with more suck. Like, you just so I find joy in making other people feel better. Ironically, though, my writing, I tend to write a little bit on the darker side because I
Mm.
think that for me, when I write, it's almost like I'm giving my permission to finally cope with that or deal with that or do something with that, do something with my trauma, do something with the hard parts of my life. And so it's weird how my brain in particular sort of separates that.
Hmm.
So, like, I like to keep my socials light, but when I write, a lot of times I tend to write kind of darker and grittier.
Okay. That's really interesting. I wonder if it like, the idea of safety in fiction, right? Like,
Mhm.
a lot of, I find a lot of writers after being in this game for, what is it, 10, 13 years now? Oh, geez.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a long time. But I've met a lot of people along the way, and a lot of writers, like, they explore those darker sides of themselves and of their experiences within their fiction. And there's a
Mhm.
safety in that. But when it comes to the real world, yeah, like, there's enough heartbreak
Um,
and sadness and stuff to go around. It's okay to, like, laugh sometimes. There's that saying that you gotta laugh to keep from crying
uh-huh.
situation. So it's
Um,
not like brushing it under the rug, but that's an interesting thing that you break it up
um,
into those.
well, and you know how a lot of times people talk about flat characters
Mm,
or this character feels two dimensional or this character feels two dimensional. And sometimes I wonder if like we forget that if we want a character to feel realistic, then they do need to have all the emotions. Not to say that a character can't be mostly happy or mostly brooding or mostly angry,
mhm.
but no one person feels just those things all the time.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Sometimes with my online persona, people assume that that is just every part of me.
Right.
And that is definitely a part of me. I really enjoy that, and if you meet me in real life, especially in a social setting, I am very much that way, but that doesn't mean that I don't still carry trauma and hurt and pain and stuff that I'm trying to figure out and stuff that I'm going through, like, stuff that I would never talk about on social media, stuff that's very private to me, and
Mhm.
so when I write, I think you're right, that safety in fiction, some without even realizing it, I think I sort of channel all of that into my writing.
Yeah. Yeah, and with fictional characters, you're like, "Okay, it's your problem now. There you go."
Right?
Now you can do that. Yeah, like,
Exactly.
I wrote my circus fantasy is, actually what I wrote that whole historical circus fantasy as a way to untangle PTSD because
Mm,
there's amnesia and there's memory loss and there's these broken fragmented memories in that story, and the whole like, I wrote it and then realized after the fact that I'm like, "Oh, this is very in line with, like, what I've been dealing with in my life," and then I went back and when I, like, rewrote it and edited through, I, like, really could dig into those bits and pieces, like, of the idea that memories fragment through PTSD, and you don't just forget them, they're, like, broken, and they're in shards and pieces all over your brain, and are triggered by, like, these weird things, and they have real world consequences and all that kinda stuff, so it was just, like, really interesting to be able to dig in, but because it's a fantasy setting, and it's a fantasy romance, and she's a fire bearer, and, she falls in love with her enemy and all of this kind of stuff, it was more like, "Okay, well, that's fun," but, like, there's still the dark parts in there, but there's, like, humor and other things, and it's, like, kind of a little bit away from it,
yeah.
but an interesting thing too was, and I'd love your thoughts on this as well, is that when I first wrote it, I was still too close to it. I was like by the time I went back to the story and re-edited it and made it what it is now, I was, like, 7 or 8 years into recovery from, like, doing actual therapy with a with a trained professional to work through it. So, like, what are your thoughts on that darkness and writing that kind of stuff in there is, in the sense of having to be, like, maybe a step away from it in order to do it justice? Or, like, when you're
Yeah.
in it, like, how do you feel about that?
So, oddly enough, I had something happen a couple years ago that was super, super hard for me. Like, it
Mhm.
was maybe not necessarily traumatic as much as it was just absolutely devastating for me.
Right.
And as it was still fresh and as I was still going through it, I had some friends say, "Well, just channel into your writing. I mean, this is like the perfect thing for you to like just really push it in there."
Mhm.
I think the problem with it being so raw and you're still so in it is that you can't look at it objectively because
Mhm.
you're still in that survival mode. Like
Mhm.
you're still trying to figure out how to navigate it yourself. I don't know how the heck I would give it to a character. I can't even figure it out. How are they
Yeah.
supposed to figure it out? Now, maybe for some people that is a great way for them to work through it, but I do think that when you're dealing with trauma or something difficult, it takes a minute for your body to be able to absorb it and to hold it.
Mhm.
Because once you can hold it, once your body can hold it, then you can look at it and say, okay, I know what to proactively do with this.
Mhm.
But in the moment when it's so raw, we're still so reactive, right? We're still
Yeah.
trying to just cope and figure it out. I think even Brene Brown said something about that because I believe I was reading something she had written and it was that idea of like of allowing yourself to grow from what happened
Mhm.
and allowing yourself to change from what happened and then recognizing the lessons you learned and the path you had to take. And I feel like if you can sometimes we can't quite write that raw thing yet because
Yeah.
yeah, like we're still trying to figure out what that looks like for us. But once we've had a minute to sit with it, once we've had a minute to figure out what to do with it and how to move on from it or whatever, then we can take what we've learned and we can apply it to a story or apply it to a character. And I feel like it's stronger that way because we know how to help the character through it and how help them achieve something, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, yeah, I like that too. It's almost like when you're in the midst of it, journaling is the best. like channeling it into your writing, that's great. Journal about it. And then,
Yeah.
don't show anyone your journal. There's I mean, even in the first iteration of my circus book, there was so much raw anger in it. There was, like, so much unresolved anger, and so it didn't really make sense in the story, and it was very kind of, like, surface level because I was still in the like, whatever step you're in, whether you're in the anger or the denial or the
Mhm.
bargaining or whatever, you gotta move through your steps and then come out of it, because also, as a fiction author, we owe it to our readers to not trauma dump on them as well, right? Like, to alchemize, like, that's kind of my word of the year, is, like, that idea of alchemizing things and, like, taking something that is, shadowy and hard and, like, almost poisonous, right? And, like, cleansing it and breaking it down and remaking it into, like, what I think alchemy was the art of turning something into gold, like, turning I
Mhm.
can't remember what it was, but anyways, the spiritual side of it is, like, taking your shadows or your demons and kind of, like, putting them through that process into, like, how can you help me instead of hinder me, and when
Yeah.
you're writing fiction and you're giving a book to a reader, you also owe them a fully complete story as well, right? Like,
Yes.
lessons learned and things moved through, and whether they connect with it or not is their own experience, but yeah, like, that first iteration of that one story after I read it back, like, 10 years later, I was like,
Ooh.
"So mad." This was an angry girl, this story doesn't make any sense, but
Yeah. No.
what are you working on these days as far as writing?
Well, I write young adult fantasy,
Mhm,
and the book that I had put out on submission, we only did one round of submissions, my agent, and nobody picked it up, but I figured it would be a hard sell because it's my first book that I've written that has dragons in it, but
mm,
dragons as soon as Fourth Wing came out, I was like, it doesn't matter that it's totally different.
yeah,
It's still a dragon story, and there's like a million dragon stories, so I think it's kind of hard to stand out with
mhm,
that. So, anyway, I'm actually drafting a brand new, story that is more zodiac based, so it's
ooh.
like celestial magic kinda thing, so we'll see. We'll see if I can pull it off. That's what I'm working on.
Well, I'm sure you can. I've worked with you before on your your stories. You have fantastic ideas. I would like
Mhm.
to chat a little bit about that though. With you've been pretty committed to the traditional publishing route. Um, how did you decide that? Like, what has kind of led you on that path, and how has that looked for you over the years?
Well, when I first got into writing, um indie publishing still didn't have quite the boom that it has now, right?
Mhm,
And so self-publishing was not necessarily looked down on, but it was one of those things where it's like, "Ooh, you don't know what you're gonna get with a self-published book,"
mhm.
and I did read a few self-published books, and they weren't good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so I just assumed at the time that
Right.
traditional publishing was the one way. Do you know what I mean? Because I didn't know any different. I didn't know any better really.
Yeah.
And then of course over the last decade, self-publishing is totally different now than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've read many wonderful books that were self-published, and I have large majority of my author friends are self-published, and their books are wonderful.
Mhm.
And so I think for me, it's mostly been, I don't know, maybe not for me, okay, maybe twofold. One, I'm not quite ready to let go of that initial dream or that initial idea of, ooh, getting a book picked
Mhm.
up and published. But also I'm at this point in my life where the idea of doing it all on my own feels very overwhelming.
Mhm. It is.
Oh, yeah, where I'm
Overwhelming.
just like, I can barely manage time to write, and I'm not saying that I am busier than anybody else,
Sure.
that's not what I'm saying. I just think in the emotional and mental space that I'm in right now, I feel like I do not have it in me to quite take that step to take on all of it
Mhm.
figuring it all out and self-publishing all on my own. I'm That just feels very overwhelming right now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, as someone who is self-published, but I also have an agent, and I've done the whole on submission thing. And I mean, when I first started out, it was more or less because I'm a designer by trade, and so I was like, I could do a cover better than, or I want to be in charge. Basically, that was it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, really, let's just highlight my control issues here for a moment, because I chose self-publishing because I am ADHD, I am impatient, I am impulsive, and I am creatively controlling. And those were the 3 reasons basically why I chose to self-publish in the beginning when I started writing YA and young adult. And I very quickly learned that I write my young adult books that I wrote at the time. I write adult books now, but at the time I wrote young adult books that were very young adult. And so then I self-published them. But like, I don't know a 16-year-old with a credit card and an Amazon account, right? Like, and so I didn't at the time. And so I realized after getting a whole bunch of terrible reviews about, like, "I can't believe how stupid this character is and how their choices were so dumb," and I'm like, "They're 14. They're 5."
Yeah.
I don't recall a single good decision I made when I was 15, right? Like, I was
Right.
emotional, and I was obsessed with boys, and I was like, and all of these things. And so I was at some point, I was like, "You know what? I don't wanna self-publish young adult anymore, because I would like, if I'm gonna write for teenagers, I would like those books to be in the hands of teenagers." And that's when I went on the journey to get the agent and to move through that process. But for me, I like the idea of the hybridity. But yes, like, it
Mhm.
is o really overwhelming, and now more so than like, I published my first book 12 years ago, and that was in like, what do they call it? The golden era of self-publishing, where you wrote a book and you hit publish and you're like, "Look at me."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then all the reviews came in about, like, "This book isn't edited," and you're like, "Oh, was I supposed to do that?" Like, I don't know. And
Oh, I love it.
now with all of this technology and all of this growth and all of the social media and everything, like, the
Mhm.
value of things is just so top tier that it
Yeah.
like, now I'm at the process where I'm like, "Mm-mm, I wanna go back to the traditional route, because, like, I just want somebody else to handle all of that." Like,
Yeah.
I'm 40 now, my control issues are tiny. I want other people to who are better at it and who, like, know, and that's what they do, I want them to do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's expensive as well. So,
Yeah.
there's pros and cons,
Uh,
all of this long-winded rambling to say that I think there are certain people who just wanna go that route, and there are
yeah.
certain people who wanna go the self-publishing route, and we
Mhm.
don't have to, like, dislike each other for our choices.
No.
It's totally okay to be like, "I just don't wanna self-publish," like,
Yeah.
I have nothing against.
That is one of the hardest things that actually I really struggle with that on social media is seeing like a trad published author say something derogatory about indie or an indie person saying something derogatory about a trad. And I'm like, why does that even matter?
Mhm.
Like they're both hard paths. They're both hard.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, don't we just want to write books?
yeah.
So why are we bashing on each other?
Yeah, and I mean, they both serve great purposes, right? Like, if you
Mhm.
want your stuff in bookstores, that, like, traditional route, if you're writing for teenagers, I mean, the best way to get in front of teenagers is through, like, library journal reviews and being in bookstores. Like, there's still
Yeah.
that whole thing. It's interesting though, now with the rise of, like, Kickstarter and all of these things, I feel like there's a real drive for physical copies again, and especially, special editions. I mean, and then we get into
Yes.
the FOMO and the overconsumerism and the whatnot and the so forth. Like, there's good and bad in everything that happens.
Right.
But there's just so many options now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's great because people who, there are stories being published, self-published, that wouldn't get picked up by traditional publishing,
Mhm.
because unfortunately traditional publishing is a business, and
Um,
they want what sells. And self-published authors go out there and kind of push a lot of these new ideas and these new stories and prove to publishers that like, they will
mhm.
sell and they will make money, and so you should pick them up. And so like there's
Yeah.
it's like it's an ecosystem now, which is really cool to
Mhm.
see.
Yeah, and I do think that traditional publishing sometimes picks up books that people don't really want that. I mean, there is a reason why self-published authors are doing so well is because they are writing the stories that readers want. And sometimes it's hard to find that with a trad publishing situation. And but that's not always the case. I
Mhm.
there's this could be a whole long conversation about that for sure. I just think at the end of the day, people should do what they want and what makes them happy, and we shouldn't be bashing on each other for that because I think we all just have this dream of writing a book that finds its ideal reader and makes somebody happy or changes somebody's life or gives them a moment of escapism or
Mhm.
something. And yeah, that's gonna look different for everybody. I absolutely have a friend who's trying to talk me into self-publishing one of my stories, and that's on the back burner for me. I would love to be a hybrid author someday. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
But at this moment in my life, I'm just like, I just gotta focus on one project at a time.
Yeah.
All I can handle.
Completely.
Too much going on, too much going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, and, like, one thing to keep in mind too, if there's anybody, like, waffling between these 2 options as well, is, like, the struggle that I'm having and where I think you're being really smart about it, is that I have self-published now, and in order to move to traditional publishing, I have to start with a whole new brand and identity, right? Because I don't if you want to move from self-publishing to traditional publishing, you have to have the numbers to back it up, right? They want to know that you are worth the risk, that you're going to sell. They either want you making a lot of money right out the gate, or they want you as a debut. There's
Yeah.
really no like like having conversations with my own agent and moving through that. If I do sell a book traditionally, I have to put it under a whole new name. And so I'm holding like my actual name to be like, okay, well, if I'm going to traditional publish, like I'm going to use this name. And so I'm keeping it safe and making
Yeah.
sure like that I don't, but I'm also impulsive, ADHD. So I'm like, I could self-publish under that, and just do this name and do that name and do all the things.
Yeah.
I'm not very singularly focused, which is a flaw. Um, in a lot of
I don't think it's a flaw.
ways. In some ways, it's not. It's why I do things like this because I can, I'm like, "That's a great idea. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Let's all bring the ideas." Um,
Perfect.
but, yeah, that idea of kind of, like, holding that space because if you
Mhm.
do get a traditional deal, then you have depending on what your contract ends up being, like, then you have options to move around within the
Yeah.
industry from there, and making those kind of slower, more deliberate decisions is not a bad thing. There are some authors who really thrive under that fast pace, like, right to market, hit
Mhm.
those trends like that, but, I mean, you sell a traditional published book, if your dragon book had sold, which is this is one thing that blows my mind about traditional publishing, if that dragon book had sold, it wouldn't come out for another 3 years, and there'd be a whole
Yeah.
nother round of dragon, trends
Right?
coming through.
Yeah.
But you can't predict those kinds of things, and so I find,
Um,
like, looking at it a little bit deeper, what my theory, and there are no scientific evidence to back it up, is that, like, self-publishing really, rewards the trendsetters, the trailblazers, the people who write fast, publish fast, have lots of ideas, really listening to, like, what readers want right now. Traditional
Mhm.
publishing tends to be more of those universal stories, the stories that last, the stories that, stretch over time, the Lord of the Rings type stories
Yeah.
where it's still relevant 20 years, 30, 40 years from now kind of thing, and
Yeah.
it's just and both of those stories are different, neither one of them is better or worse than the other, they're just different,
Yeah.
and that's okay if you're a slow, methodical writer or if you really are, like, playing the long game, that's cool too.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I first started writing, I was really in a hurry.
Mm.
Like, I was in a hurry. I wanted to be published. I wanted to be that, like, amazing writer that got published so fast. I think maybe everybody does. It's
Mhm.
like some part of them wants to just be that wow, that writer, it only took her this long to get published after she started writing, da, da, da. And looking back, I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad." Because looking at my writing even 5 years ago, it's so much stronger now. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying either side can be extreme, moving too fast and moving so slow
Yeah.
that you never take a risk and you never put yourself out there. Obviously, I'm talking more just like recognizing that maybe if you just keep moving forward and not getting frustrated when something doesn't happen as fast as you want or whatever. Every step you take, every effort you make is momentum, and
Mhm.
eventually you're gonna get where you wanna be. But I know it's sometimes so frustrating when you put in 5 years or 10 years and yet
Mhm.
have, again, in quotations, "nothing to show for it." That can be really, really hard. But I think there's a part of me now, like m- m- me now, looking back at me then, I'm like, oh, I don't know that I could have. Maybe that wasn't the right timing for me
Mhm.
with like my family, with my writing, all of that would have been actually very difficult.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something to be said for like maybe the path you're on.
Mhm.
It actually is the right path, and it's just maybe a little slower than maybe you want or you think, but that doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's literally the whole reason I'm doing this podcast is that those, like, deeper knowing pieces, right? Like, the whole tagline for the podcast is "Intuition meets industry," right? And, like, how to really learn how to trust yourself,
Mhm.
and that's really hard. I have, a similar experience of wanting to, and I jumped into self-publishing, and, like, I'm not embarrassed of the books I put out. I wrote my and published my first book when I was 27,
Yeah, that's
and,
amazing.
and, like, I'm super proud of it, and I wrote it in this bubble of absolute bliss of just being like,
Yes.
best thing ever, and I've, read a few pages of it now, and I'm like, "Oh boy, okay." Like, I'm still very proud of it, and it was a book that I needed to write at that point in my life, but now that I also know that, I'm glad that I didn't become one of those authors who took off right away because I stopped writing young adult, and like, I've been spending the last 12 years honing my voice. I've just been doing it publicly, and I feel so much more rooted in who I am now that, like,
Yeah.
now is sort of where I'm like, "Okay, that was fun, and that was great, and I'm super proud of what I've done." But I even
Yeah.
somebody took out my book from the library. I'm a librarian in my town, and somebody took out my book, my first book, and I couldn't help myself as they, like, walked out the door. I'm like, "Just keep in mind it was the first book I ever wrote. Don't judge me, please." So it's like this weird holding of this, like, I'm happy I did all of that and experimented with all of that stuff publicly, but it also, looking back on it, that's not what I really knew that I wanted to do. How were those like, I had these little whispering things that happened to me along the way to be like, "This isn't where you're meant to be, like, keep moving or try something new," or whatever.
Mhm.
How did that look for you? And how did you kind of, if you were in a hurry at the beginning, how did you sort of, like, settle that in and just lean into
Oh,
what it is you think that or you believe that you are meant to do?
I just when I first started, I remember having the strongest feeling that this was what I was supposed to do, that this was a good thing. This was a good thing.
Mhm.
And because I had never thought I would be a writer. I was an artist.
Mm.
I have a college degree in visual arts. I always thought that I would be. Do you really?
I
Oh,
do.
good. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought I would. Always thought, I mean, I've loved art since I was a kid. I loved reading since I was a kid, but I never thought about being a writer.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm not smart enough for that. I can't, I can't do that. So, but after I had kids, I don't know. I just, I think I was still not quite able to allow myself to just do things for fun. I felt like I had to do it to create a masterpiece and it had to be for a purpose and da 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 da. Da. I couldn't just allow myself just to do
Mhm.
any, I don't know. It was kind of a strange place to be.
Yeah. I feel like that's
And
welcome to womanhood. Just
yeah, right.
is there no purpose? Does this not serve other people? Then why are you doing
Right!
it?
It's true though.
Yeah.
There really is something to be said for that and trying to unravel what that looks like and but also still raise the little tiny humans you brought into this world and
Yeah.
figure all that out. And I think I just reached a point where I had a couple of friends that had started writing and out of the blue, this one friend called me up and she's like, "Hey, I just had this feeling that I should call you." And I was like, "Huh, that's funny because I was just thinking about you. I have a story idea." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, okay, here we go." And so she just like took me by the arm and pulled me into the writing world, somewhere I never thought I would be. I
Mhm.
never thought I would be here. That's for
Right.
sure. But anyway, so when I started, I had no idea what I was doing, but I just remember feeling like this was a good thing.
Mhm.
And it was that simple. It was almost like a spiritual experience, as weird as that sounds, writing my very first book, because even though there's nothing spiritual about it, like, it was a young adult spy fantasy,
Right.
and but there was something very, I don't know, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, very spiritual,
Mhm.
and I think it's because anytime we're creating something, we're tapping into just some inherent internal thing that we have, right? And, and then nothing came of that, and then I tried to write another book and tried to write another book, and then nothing was ever ready, and nothing was ever ready to pitch to an agent, nothing was ever clean, nothing was ever polished, nothing was ever ready, and I just kept thinking, "What am I even doing?" I mean, I definitely hit those years where I was just like, "Maybe I should just quit. Nothing's happening, nothing is happening. I'm clearly not meant for this. I can't write a story good enough. I can't write fast enough." Meanwhile, I'm still having babies and raising humans and
Mhm.
dealing with just life, because life is
Is life.
hard and but I really kept kind of holding on to that initial feeling of like, this is a good thing. This
Mhm.
is a good path to take. There's nothing, not that it was like my one and only path
Yeah.
or this is the one way. It was just that feeling of like, this is a good thing.
Mhm.
This is a good thing to be doing. And so I don't know, for some reason that just always, like in those dark moments, that was something I always turned back to, was that initial feeling of this is a good thing that you're doing.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need to just slow down and not be in such a rush and just find the joy
Mhm.
in writing again, in storytelling, and just move forward that way and just trust that when the timing is right and the story is right, something will happen.
Yeah.
So I did sign with a literary agent, but I clearly didn't sell the first book we threw out. So now I'm writing another story and I am holding on to just I'm trying to hold on to that trust of
Mhm.
every step you take is still part of your journey. Cause hindsight's an interesting thing, right?
Mhm.
Because when you're going through something, you're just like, what the crap is happening? I can't figure anything out. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I should just quit. But then when you have an opportunity, when something finally happens and you can look back,
Mhm.
there's something to be said for seeing it, because then you're like, oh, if that hadn't happened, then that never would happen. And if that never would happen, then that never would happen. And it's like you see this, like it was almost like you were meant to be where you're supposed to be when you're there, you know?
Yeah, which I think is super interesting, again, especially, particularly for women or people who anybody who, is naturally inclined to people please, right, as well.
Guilty.
Guilty. I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm working hard
Same.
on boundaries. Um,
Yes.
it's very awkward when I set a boundary, but I'm learning and I'm doing it. But, anyways, where was I going with that? Oh, yes, this the difference between listening to the path, like you were saying, you look back and you're like, "Wow, it's almost like I stepped in all of the footprints that were laid out for me." But, like, how did I do that? Because I fought it every step of the way, right? Like, with
Yeah.
the brain and the heart kind of battle and I did this, 5-day challenge manifesting thing or whatever, and, the woman who ran it, her name is She Tells Story, and she was talking about how people always say mind, body, spirit, but it's actually spirit, body, mind, and so,
Mhm.
like, the knowing there is the knowing, and then there is the embodying, and then there is the thinking, but we often in our society start with thinking, and I find that, like, how much of that, I should be doing it faster, I should be doing it better, maybe I should do this, and maybe I should do that, and how much of all of that thinking is just you being in your own way. Like, just walk the path. I'm a story like, even when you were talking, you're like, like, touching your chest and stuff, like, it comes from I find, like,
Yeah.
storytellers are storytellers. You are a storyteller, and storytelling is actually an extremely spiritual thing. It is how humans have survived as long as we have, in my opinion, because, like, back in the cave days, you learned what to do and what not to do through stories. You learn how to be a good person through stories. You learn how to process feelings and traumas and all of these things through stories. And I find that people who are like truly storytellers, um, I can't remember who said it, so I might have to look it up. But somebody, it was a writer, said that his number one piece of writing advice is if you can do anything else, do that. No. Like, his writing advice basically is quit because this
Yeah.
sucks. If you are good at and anything else brings you any joy or any passion, do that instead of this. And I have
Yeah.
found through conversations over the years with authors and creatives, artists, all sorts of people who, like, create any form of art. There's a common thread of, like, I just am called to do it. I don't know what else to do. I quit writing after I had my daughter for like 5 years, and it got to the point where I was just antsy. I couldn't function. I just need to write. And so forgetting the marketing and forgetting the publishing and forgetting all of that nonsense, like, and just coming back to I tell stories because I have to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then that feels better. And then all the other stuff is bonus, it's icing on the cake, right? If you get published, if you get readers, if
Mhm.
people, like, tell you that you're good at what you do, but like, when it comes down to it, it's just, like, knowing that that's just what you need to do, and then doing it.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, and
Easy.
it was interesting oh, sorry, and it was interesting listening to you because you're like, "Well, I should do that, and I should do that, and I should do that," and I'm like, "Why do we should all over ourselves?" You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
we are so bad with that.
Yeah.
We are constantly, constantly tearing ourselves down for things that are honestly a lot of the times beyond our control. Like, we can't control so many aspects of our lives,
Mhm.
and yet we gauge our worth or our talent or our productivity or whatever it is on these external forces that are beyond us.
Mhm.
And even sometimes when we're struggling to sit down to write or we doom scroll instead of write, sure, sometimes we're just whatever, but honestly, I think a lot of the times it's because 'cause we're just tired.
Mhm.
We're worn down, and so you kind of cycle through these periods where you're just, are trudging through every day, and then all of a sudden, in a couple weeks, you're like, "You know what? Enough of this. Enough of this. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna write." You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I think we all cycle through this.
Yeah.
I have read so many things from so many authors where they say, "Well, I never let a day pass where I don't write," or "I never let a this," or "I never this, and I never this, and I always this, and I always that." And I just keep thinking, "Chill is your life," because
Yeah.
like, there are some days where I wake up, with a plan, and then 20 minutes into my day, the plan explodes because this kid this, or this family member this, or this friend this, and,
Yeah.
that these are things beyond my control and, or work or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
so I'm just like, maybe we all should give ourselves a little more grace
Well,
and recognizes we're just doing the best we can.
yeah, and, like, every time, I hear writing advice that it's like, you
Mm.
must write every day." I watched a master class on writing, and they're like, "You must write every single day if you wanna be a writer." And every time I hear something like that, I always think of I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show Schitt's Creek?
Oh, some of it, uh-huh.
All I think of is Alexis Rose when she's like, "I love that for you."
Yes.
I love that for you.
Yes.
But I have found out I'm super into a lot of I love the, like, science blending, spiritual blending magic. I love that little, like, area. I do not work on a 24-hour schedule. I don't. I never
Yeah.
have. I am a burst of energy, crash into hermetism. Like, I do a lot in a really short period of time, and then I watch TV for a week, right? Like, that is how I work, and,
Yeah.
like, living in this whole write more, write faster, write better, do every day, wake up at 5 a.m. and do this and have this routine and that routine, and I'm just like, I have so many contradicting things in my personality where, first of all, I hate being told what to do, even if it's by me. Even if I'm telling me what to do, I will rebel against my own to-do list. And so I'm learning, like, one of the things for me that I really leaned into recently is working in seasons and cycles. I'm cyclical. I work with the moon, not the sun. It just always drives me crazy with that kind of advice. And I understand that people have to you can't just be willy-nilly
Right.
with your advice, especially if you're somebody online who's teaching people how to write. You have to be confident in this is the framework I use, these are the steps I use, this is the whatnot I use. And what I want to do and what I want to help other authors do is for them to be able to separate themselves from other people's firm language. So if you say this is the 5 steps that I took to write a bestseller, or to, like, for you and I, for example, I'd love to move into, like, talking about some social media stuff too. Like, and this is probably a perfect example with I don't do social media. I feel so drained, and so I deleted
Yeah.
everything, deleted all my social media, and I, like, lost 10 pounds from the stress, like, from not having any stress of having to try and figure out how to do social media. And, but I can listen to somebody. I know myself well enough now that I can listen to somebody. I could listen to you with rapt interest about how you've grown your social media account and how you do it and why you do it, and I could be like, "That's amazing." Right? And
Yeah.
but, like, the us having a conversation about it also will help other people who are listening potentially, hopefully, be like, "Yeah, I actually don't think I would do well on social media," or like, "That sounds like so much fun. I am gonna try those things, and I'm gonna do those steps." But being able to kinda separate yourself from
Mhm.
the advice that's being given, and to be able to, like, take it all in, take it onto your plate, and then scoot the peas out, like, I don't like those. I
Yes.
don't like that, and I'm gonna, like, build my little à la carte publishing journey.
That's
Um,
right.
so
That's right.
anyways, there was no question attached to that.
No, but I agree with you. I think these absolutes are they can be very damaging because people begin to feel like, well, they're not really a writer if they're not writing every day. Well, they're not really a writer if they're not writing 5,000 words a day. Well, they're not really, you know what I mean? And I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, or maybe that works for them in their life, and maybe they carved it out that way, and that absolutely is the only way that they can write, and that's amazing for them.
Mhm,
And I am very happy for them. But that doesn't work for me because if I had to put my not that there aren't times where I tell my family, "Look, I have a deadline.
mhm,
I'm gonna be kinda checked out. I need you guys to step up." But I involve that. But the idea of just, like, locking everybody away for the sake of, like, only writing or doing this thing every day when my kid is having a crisis or whatever, I'm like, "I can't." For me, that doesn't work.
well, I have an
You know what I mean?
interesting side note, or tidbit. My daughter was 4 months old, and at the time, we were living in a place where I had to drive 5 hours one way to get groceries.
Oh.
And so she's 4 months old, she's in the car, I'm driving from where we live in the middle of nowhere to the city in the middle of nowhere where there's a grocery store, and she is screaming in the back seat because she hated being in vehicles, and I'm listening to Stephen King's On Writing, and I remember so there's this part in the book where he's like, "You have to lock yourself in a room." I would lock myself in a room, and I would lock the door, and I would tell my family, "Nope, this is my writing time," and then I wouldn't come out until I got 2,000 words. I literally pulled my car over to the side of the road, and I, like, ejected the CD. I was listening to it on a disc, and I hucked that shit out the window. I was like, "No, thank you." Like, sure, if I had a maid and a nanny, which would be great,
Right.
and I would love that, but I didn't have that, and so I remember just, like, it's the middle of winter, and I'm driving on these icy roads and listening to this man tell me that I have to lock myself in a room and write for 2,000 words and tell him with my screaming daughter in the back, and I was just like
Right. Yeah. You're like, "Sorry, sir, this does not work."
yeah, I'm like, "Great. I'm so happy for you. I love that
I
for you."
know, I
Yeah.
know. Well, and to transition that into social media, because I
Yeah.
know you wanna touch on that, I to me, social media is okay. Do you need social media to be a successful author? Hopefully, everybody knows no. Like,
Yeah.
you don't. You don't need to. At the end of the day, you're a writer. You're not a content creator. So, your top priority is to write a good book.
Mhm.
That, at the end of the day, is the most important thing that you need. Now, what I try to teach authors who are scared of social media or who don't like social media is that it is simply a tool. And at the end of the day, I think sometimes people get stuck in this mentality of like, how can I get people to follow me? How do you get people to follow you? Like, how do I build a following? How do I get people to follow me? And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, we have to stop right there
Mhm.
because you need to take that mentality and turn it around. It's not how do you get people to follow me? It's what do I have to offer?
Mhm.
Because the reason you follow somebody on a social media account is because they've offered you something, whether it's something educational, something entertaining, or something inspirational, right? So those are like the three main reasons we follow somebody because they offered something. So an author, what do they have to offer? Story.
Mhm.
That is what they have to offer. So if you have a book and people are and a lot of authors like, well, I don't like marketing my book or I don't like showing my face or da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, again, at the end of the day, this is actually isn't about you.
Mhm.
And so what it is about your product. Like, are you proud of your book?
Yeah.
Yes. And so you are offering your readers an experience. You want them to experience your story, right? And so if you can shift your mentality around to think about like this book that you made, this story that you wrote might offer a reader something.
Mhm.
And that is what you lean into. And it's not about you and it's not about your face and it's not about making people laugh or entertaining people. I do that because I don't have a book. So that's again, I lean into that or I talk about other books I love
Yeah.
like I fill my content with other things. So I'm trying to offer something different until I have a book that I can share that is my own, right?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, that doesn't mean I can't share other stories that have meant a lot to me or other books that I've loved or here's something funny because we're all readers do this thing or all writers do this thing or here we are being silly and whatever.
Mhm.
But the idea that an author just has to think of who are they speaking to? They're speaking to one person. Social media is about speaking to one person, not a crowd or an audience, one person, your ideal reader, the person that you feel like is going to love your book the most.
Mhm.
So when you create content, especially about your book or about reading or writing, you're speaking to that one ideal reader who's going to love your book.
Mhm.
And so if you can think of it that way, then it's far less intimidating because you want your story to be impactful, right? And so if you lean into what does my book have to offer? What does my story have to offer? Then you create content around that and that is what you push and that is what you offer. And that is what will attract your readers.
Yeah, for sure, and also, I think it's important to know, like, your personality type, right? And
Yeah.
so you make those hilarious videos, and it feels very authentic. It feels like it's something you can tell when you're scrolling through
Okay,
and you
but that's just because I am so good at epically embarrassing myself on accident. Like I've done so many epically embarrassing things. I'm like, I might as well just embrace that side of me and do it on purpose.
yeah. That is true, that is true. Um, but, like, I think what ends up becoming a hindrance to a lot of authors is that they feel like they also have to do that, right? Like,
Right.
whether it's you, like, whether they're trying to emulate you and your, epic facial expressions, or if they are trying to emulate somebody who has, like, Hollywood level production value. Like, some of these videos that people make and this fan art that
Same.
comes out and everything, it's just insanely good. There's
Yeah.
so many, like, high quality things that can be done, and, like, phones have amazing cameras now and all of this stuff that it just feels so intimidating. But like you were saying, if you don't want, like, you don't, first of all, you don't need social media. And
Yep.
if you want to have social media, you don't have to have Hollywood level production. You can literally just put a picture of your book or like those little screenshots of your little like it doesn't have to look like anything
Mhm.
or be anything. I see, like, for me, my issue with social media isn't because I'm scared of it, it's because I'm not a hype girl. Like, I don't care what other people are interested in and what they're doing. I do to an extent. I'm not, like, heartless. So, like, I don't care about anybody, but
Oh,
I am not the kind of person that goes into a crowd and is like, "Let's all be excited about the thing." That's not my personality, and it
yeah.
feels like I did this working geniuses test thing, and galvanizing was my lowest. I am not a galvanizer. I do not bring the energy of a room up. I am the person, like, the way that I've always explained it is, like, if the online world was a house party, like, Instagram is like the dance floor. Everybody's on the day, everybody's there, everybody's in there, and, like, Twitter is like the kitchen where everyone's yelling at each other over the counter, you know? And I am the person who is sitting in the backyard by the fire going like, "Hey, who are you? I think I've seen you around somewhere. Let's talk about stuff." And I'm the person that sits still, and then I just talk to people as they come by. And I'm like,
But
"That was great."
see that to me is a perfect social media persona.
Mhm,
One of my favorite creators on TikTok, and I can't even think of her name, as terrible as that sounds. She's an author, but all she does is she takes walks, and while she's taking walks, she just talks to the
mhm,
camera. She just talks about, like, here's a little bit of a writing advice, and here's an interesting story, or here's an interesting fact. No hype, no craziness. It's just her walking and her talking.
mhm.
But but there's something about it that's so calming, but I'm also receiving information and I'm receiving education, but her videos are just so simple and calm that I'm like, "I like being here."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it feels very one-on-one, and I love that because, I mean, I can totally be a hype girl, 100%. But at the end of the day, I would rather have a conversation with an individual.
Mhm.
Like, I want to know someone I would rather get to know somebody deeply than a bunch of people superficially.
Right. Fair.
And and so not I'm obviously, I'm not saying you have to be on social media, but I'm just saying, like, that for you,
Mhm.
you would just have to lean into that side of you, like, I just want this one-on-one conversation, and
Yeah.
that's all I'm doing. But, again, social media is not a necessity, but
Yeah, yeah, for sure, and I think these kinds of things are interesting, and I think they'll be very, helpful for people. I have one other, Canadian bookstagrammer influencer that I'm gonna interview, and I'm super excited for our conversation too, um, because
she'll probably have way better things to offer than me. I'm just more like, do what's comfortable for you. Like, if you hate showing your face, then take video clips of your bookshelves and add words over it. Like, it's just the idea is just that you're tapping into an emotion,
Mhm,
right? At the end of the day, that's really all you need. Tapping into an emotion so that somebody stops for a minute and says, "Wait, what?"
yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah, and the way that I see it too is, like, that also at the end of the day, it's about reach. It's about getting your
Mhm.
book in front of other people, and so, again, for me, I decided I wasn't really interested in social media, so what I didn't just go, "Nah, that's it. I'll just see what happens," right? I started a podcast. I'm long-winded. I don't do 4 seconds. No, thank you. I do 4 hours. That's how things work in my world. So I got rid of social media in favor of doing podcasting, of long form blogging, of, like, that is what
I bet.
and so it's not just about being like, "I hate social media, I'm not gonna do it."
Right.
It's about what works best for my personality, what lights me up,
Yeah.
gets what makes me excited, what makes me wanna reach out. I also, again, as I've mentioned, I live in the middle of nowhere, and so being able to talk to I can't go to conferences, I can't go to workshops without, like, literally bankrupting my family. So,
Yeah.
this is what I'm like, "This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna talk I wanna talk to creative people, that's literally all I wanna do. I wanna write stories and talk to other people who are doing cool things and ask them about their cool things." And this is the best way to do it. And so
I
here I
love that.
am. I take that energy if you're and so that's one of like that's kind of my advice. If you're feeling drained and totally at a loss on social media and you feel like there's something else that's better suited to your personality, take all that stress and anxiety from this one thing that's not working. Or in the other way, if you're blogging and trying to, to have a podcast and you're like, this is so time consuming and taxing, just take that energy and stress and move it over to the social media side of things and make snappy little 7-second videos that people love, right? And I
Yeah.
think the real balance is somewhere in the middle, right? Like I just had to get all of my social media back. I deleted it for a year and I just got it back cuz I'm doing a branding contract with a social media company and so I need it because I need to be able to like manage the things. But I'm like, I don't have to do anything with it.
Yeah.
I'll put a thing up if I have a book I wanna talk about, but, like, I just no pressure, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine too.
Yeah.
But I what I really wanted to talk about with your social media is this it seems like such a brilliant way to live within this traditional publishing world. Like, it just seems like a really cool way to kinda keep your momentum going, to keep yourself in the community, to network, to make author friends and reader friends and all sorts of things while not putting pressure. Like, that's why I got a job as a librarian is because I was like, "Take that pressure off of my writing."
Mhm.
And so, like, what kind of, like, chicken and the egg situation? How did that happen?
Well, okay, so I remember going to a class. I think I was at a conference where it was mentioned that for authors in today's world, it is helpful to have a social media presence because so much of the marketing does end up back on the author these days, regardless of whether you're trad or indie or whatever, that it is helpful to have a presence where you can talk about your book when you have one. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And my sister, many years ago, had been a book reviewer, and so she was on like BookTube and had like a little Instagram account, and so I kind of talked to her about it, and I was like, okay, so Bookstagram, they take pretty pictures because this was right before TikTok became a thing. I
Mhm,
mean, Instagram was it, right? And it's a photo based app. So it was like, okay, take pretty pictures of books and talk about books you like. I can do that, no problem. So Instagram, I was doing that, but I don't know, it was so hard to grow. I could not grow. It was so slow. And I loved taking the photos and I loved talking about books, but it was also frustrating because I was like, I don't know what to do to stand out. Like I didn't know what to do. And then TikTok all of a sudden blew up in the book community because of right BookTok and
mhm.
they made it in the news and da da da. So then it was like this huge migration over to BookTok. And Book Talk is a lot more unhinged. It wasn't about pretty aesthetics or whatever. It was just about people getting on in their pajamas and talking about stuff that they liked. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that I can do that. So then I started making videos over on TikTok and my TikTok account blew up.
Yeah.
Like it really took off at first. So I was like, oh, Instagram is must not be where it's at. But then Instagram started pushing their reels, right, to compete with TikTok. So then I started cross posting and that was the first time I really started to see a little bit of growth on my page on Instagram was when I started creating videos.
Mm,
But there was a huge transition phase, right? Because I was bookstagrammer. So I was like doing book tours for companies and all it was just I'm promoting someone else's book. I'm promoting someone else's book. I'm promoting someone else's book. And, which was great, like, it was a great foundation or whatever, but then I realized that I need to make it a little more me.
mhm,
Because at the end of the day, the ultimate goal isn't just about bookstagramming and talking about other people's books, is I want people to know me as the author. I want people to be interested in my book if
mhm,
whenever I get that out there. So I started just transitioning into trying to, like, what brings me joy? What do I like creating? And so then I started doing lip syncs because I don't know. I don't know why, but for me, they're kind of fun.
mhm,
And so I was like, this is fun. So that was low pressure fun and whatever. And then I don't know, pretty soon the momentum started growing. And then after a while, my Instagram really took off. And everyone is different. Everyone's
mhm,
different. Some people prefer TikTok, some people prefer Instagram. I find out on a whole, it's easier for me to connect community-wise on Instagram than it is for me on TikTok. I Maybe it's because of the things I read or the things I talk about, but I don't know, the community on Instagram seems easier with
Um,
stories and DMs and stuff. TikTok is for me a little bit trickier. But, I don't know. I think that's just how I transitioned from just talking about books and being a bookstagrammer into just, let's just create what I wanna create
yeah.
and just have some fun with it. And then once I realized that the reels were working or the silly videos, I was like and then I started getting messages. "I had a really crappy week. Your videos always make me laugh," or
Mhm.
"My mom just died and I've been really struggling, so I went back and I watched all of your videos because they just made me feel better." And it was comments like that where I was like, I can do this because to me, for me, that one comment is the biggest dopamine hit.
Mhm.
Like that helped you even if it was just a silly, silly, silly thing.
Mhm.
So then I kinda leaned into that, and I think that's kinda where I found my footing.
Mhm.
But also there's a part of me that's like, when it comes down to, like, actually promoting my own book someday, I'm be like, "I know I'm silly on here, but this is gonna be dark and it's gonna make you cry."
Yeah, we're all
I
gonna
gotta
meet
go.
your shadow side at some point, but
Well, and there's a lot to be okay, so one last thing is a lot of people talk about on social media how you need to stay niche, you need to stay
Mhm.
niche. You need to not just be all over the place, and, like, while I agree that you should have purpose and you shouldn't just whatever with your posts, I also don't believe that you have to stay strictly within one content column. Like,
Mhm.
again, it's that idea of showing you that you are a human being. So sometimes I post a little bit of parenting content. Mostly it's about reading. Sometimes it's about writing. Sometimes it's just about something silly. But like, so it still fits within this general idea, but I do like the variation because if it's always just one thing, people get bored.
Mhm.
And you're gonna get bored.
Yeah.
So, don't be afraid to show other parts of your personality too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What about speaking of shadow sides, how do you manage that side of social media? The mean
The
people.
Just the mean people?
The mean people. The people who hate happiness.
Well, okay, couple of things. I'll be honest, I am very purposeful. I try to avoid drama. I try to avoid controversy. There's enough people that thrive off of controversy that not that I'm saying that if something isn't important to you that you shouldn't vocalize it. That's not all I'm saying. I'm just
Right.
saying for me personally, I don't like the controversy. I don't like touching on drama. That's just not me. That's just not me. And so I tend to avoid that altogether. However, I receive plenty of troll comments.
Mhm.
And if it's just a troll comment, I usually just delete it. Because when I first started getting them, it was very difficult for me to handle. Like, I wasn't sleeping, I was stressing for days. And then I finally just deleted one and I was like, oh my gosh, that felt so good. Because then I don't have to see it anymore.
Yeah.
It's not any notifications. It's not, oh, well, this is my account. Dang it. I can delete it if I want to delete
Yeah.
it. So I started deleting comments, and that actually really, really helped. Or I would just hide the comment so
Mhm.
nobody else would see it or whatever. The problem with going viral is it pushes your content past your target
Yeah.
audience, right? And so pretty soon you get people who have no context for you, no context for what your page is about, no context for what your video is about. They just come in with their own trauma and their own baggage and they start
Mm.
spewing it all over you. And, it's the same thing. I genuinely try to delete or block the really vicious ones because I'm like, negativity breeds negativity,
Mhm.
and I don't want people fighting in my comments. I know it's good for views, but that's not what I want my stuff to be about.
Yeah.
So if it's super negative, I just block them or I delete them.
Mhm.
I just try to keep it a safe place, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it's an important distinction that there's a difference between, like, voicing something that needs to be voiced, something that's problematic or something that's hard on the
Yeah.
world or whatever, and then drama, right? And
Yeah.
people just being mad to be mad or, like, trying to rage bait, and so, I went viral once on TikTok, and then I deleted TikTok. I made a video explaining how my ADHD brain works to my husband, and I used dishes to do it. Anyways, it was this short little video about how I was like, to him, doing the dishes is just doing the dishes. It's one task, it's one thing. But to me, doing the dishes is like 17 different tasks. It's putting away the old dishes. It's organizing the new dishes. It's cleaning out the sink. It's doing all this stuff. And he's like, he always rolls his eyes at me because I never clean out the coffee press because I'm like, that's a whole nother job. You have to like go and
Right.
dump it in the compost. It's like a whole nother thing. You have to tell me that you want the coffee emptied if you want me to do it, right? So it's just this little kind of cute video, and it went, I think within like 24 hours, it had, I think, over like 500,000 views and like 1,500 comments. And so it just evolved into this gender thing
Yeah.
where like they were just it was just women talking about it's because men are idiots and they can't do anything. And I'm like, "Mm-mm, not in my house. My husband is he's the tidy one. He's the clean one. He's the one that has all the things together. I'm the one who's like, where are my mitts? Um, with like in my pocket, right? And so I felt this intense urge to, like, defend my husband because people were being so mean to him about it, and
Mhm.
then they were talking about, like, how I was, like, a useless woman because I couldn't do the dish, right? And it was just this, like, weird thing, and I was like, "I don't want
Yeah.
this. I don't want this." And it wasn't even about, like, I was most of the time I talked about writing. This was, like, my one thing that I talked about, my brain, and
Yeah, because ADHD is such a prevalent thing now, and a lot of people are dealing with it, and so you touched on a universal thread, right? And so that universal thread, you tapped into people's emotions.
yeah, and but it like, reading through the comments, you could really tell a lot about people. You could first of all, you could tell which ones were bots and which ones were teenage boys. Like, you could
Oh,
detect the
yes.
2 of those, and you're like,
Oh, yeah.
"Okay, we'll just delete that because it's just
Yeah.
being purposely inflammatory," right? Like, you're just
Yeah.
trying to make me mad. But then there was
Yeah.
a lot of, like, comments that would come in, and they would be like, they're projecting their relationship issues onto my
Oh,
relationship, and
yes.
I was like, "I also don't wanna carry that, thank you." Like, I'm sorry that your person doesn't help you, but, like, I don't know, it's not my fault, right? And
Yes.
so there's just this weird mix of emotions, and I just wasn't in a space to handle it, and so I deleted the
Yeah.
video, and then I just, like, panic deleted all of the whole
Aw.
TikTok. But anyways,
Aw.
that's, like, just to say, like, you can tell the difference between the comments sometimes too.
Yeah.
Makes some of them easy to delete.
Well, and I do think that as a creator, I think you do need to recognize that. So my most viral video to date is on Instagram. It's like 11.6 million views or
Woo.
something. And it's a video about so my husband went out and bought chickens one day.
Mm.
Just came home with a dozen chickens and I was like, "Oh, you bought chickens?" He's like, "Yeah, I bought chickens." I'm like, "Okay." So then he decides he's gonna build a chicken coop. So he builds a chicken coop in the front of our driveway. So when it came time to move it to the backyard, he's an engineer, so
Shovel
he was
ready.
like,
The shovel.
the shovel,
Yeah.
right? So we had 3 snow shovels at the time because the 4th one was broken, but I go out there and I'm helping him, like, me and my son, like, we're lifting this giant, like, chicken coop onto these snow shovels, and then he pulls it with the four-wheeler around the back, right? So I took video clips of it because I thought it was so funny, and I thought, "How can I make this bookish?" Right? And so it was just this joke about how, like, when you get so immersed in your book, you forget to check on your husband, right? And then
Yeah.
it's like you show these clips of him dragging this chicken coop on these snow shovels. So, obviously, next thing I know, it is going very viral.
Mhm.
And it was the same thing. So a lot of people were like, "I can't believe she's rolling her eyes at that genius." And men were arguing in the comment section over which was the correct direction the shovel handle should have been.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there were, like, full-on arguments, but there were lots of men who came into the comments and said things like, "Well, there's another lazy-ass wife doing absolutely nothing
Yeah.
while her man is doing all the work. Oh, so I'm sorry, he built you a chicken coop for your chickens, and now he's moving it, now you're rolling your eyes at the way he's doing it?" I'm like, "You literally have no idea any of the backstory behind this video.
Mhm.
You are projecting your own issues with
Mhm.
your spouse into my comment section."
Yeah.
And I think as a content creator, even as an author, though,
Mhm.
it's the same thing with reviews, right? People are going to come into the review section And they're going to trauma dump all over your book because they read a very different story than you wrote
Yeah.
because of their perception or their paradigm on life.
Mhm.
And you cannot control that. It's the same thing with social media. You can't control how someone's going to receive your video.
Yeah.
Just like you can't control how somebody's going to receive your book.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Right.
had on my first book, the main character had anxiety, and the book was about how she was like tried a bunch of different medications and she didn't really like them, and like her anyways. It was a small side. It was like part of her character. And I had a review that absolutely trashed me as a human being about how I don't know anything about anxiety and how I like made it a complete farce and how like like just all of this stuff about how I should have researched and I should have done all this stuff. And I'm reading the review and I'm like, I had my first panic attack when I was 9. And so I'm like reading this review and I'm like, okay. And that taught me actually one of the biggest things that I've ever learned about writing was reading that review. And it was that a reader will only see the book through their own experiences. And my anxiety doesn't look like hers. And so it was this really interesting thing about like people show up as they are. And and there's like, we talked a little bit before about like separating yourself from that. Like other people's experiences are theirs and you don't have to attach to them and you don't have to allow, but that idea of like they're always right.
Yeah.
Even I have a romantic suspense book that they called I had 2 reviews, one 5-star, one 1-star. And the 1-star review talks about how the mystery and the suspense in the story was an afterthought and so poorly thought out and so thrown in there and haphazard and whatnot. 5-star review says the mystery was perfectly paced and everything came out at the exact right time and everything tied together perfectly in the end to create this like just insane suspense story and whatnot. And I'm like, these 2 reviews. And so as an author, you're sitting there and you're going, well, which one's right? Both of them. And so like I have started calling it Schrodinger's book. Like you open that book is both brilliant and terrible. And you won't know which it is until you open it.
Until you read it.
Right? And you read it. And that helped me with that. So like again, if there are folks who are scared of social media because of the mean people, like that's just another way to kind of reframe it from the author sense. If you can read your reviews, you can read your bad comments,
Yes.
I guess.
And I mean, it is a learning curve.
Mhm.
I think, it's gonna be hard no matter what, and most of the time, most of the comments I get now, I just kinda laugh at because I'm like, "Really? Really?
Mhm.
Okay." But, I mean, I'm sure every once in a while there's one that I'm like, "Okay, well, that actually kinda hurt,
Yeah.
sir."
Yeah.
But again, I just remove it because that is something. Because unlike a review,
Mhm.
because you can't remove a review, I can remove a negative comment,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, "I don't need that in my space," and so you're out. So
Where can people find you online and how can they be a part of your epic videos?
my videos. Well, I try to keep my name the same across all platforms. So I am on um, Instagram and TikTok are where I post the most. I do try to cross post to YouTube if you're on YouTube, and Facebook.
Okay.
And it's all under Magical Booknook. You can find me under Magical Booknook.
Awesome.
So
Great. Well, thanks for
yeah,
joining me today. It was great chatting with you.
it was fun. It was really fun. Thank you for asking me. It was great.
Of course. Thank you for listening to the Quill and Kettle podcast. If you have found inspiration in this conversation, please share it with a friend or leave a review wherever you are listening. If the cards have brought up anything for you, I would love to hear your interpretations in the comments. And please head to quillandkettle.com to sign up for weekly editor's notes where I talk writing, marketing, and branding from an intuitive perspective. If you would like to go deeper into each episode, be sure to join the Athenaeum for extended tarot reflections as well as behind the scenes and bonus content. So I think you picked up that this show is about thinking for yourself and following your own path, but for legal and ethical reasons, I just have to say it. The views and opinions expressed by the guests of the Quill and Kettle podcast do not necessarily represent the views of the podcast or anyone who works for it. All stories portrayed in this podcast are meant for entertainment purposes only and are not meant to be taken as mental health, medical, financial, or business advice.